I always remember the moment when I saw Victor for the first time. The Earth was flowing with the galaxy in the realm of time. Every step he took, the surrounding scenery changed. The Temple of Artemis collapsed in fire. The afternoon sun shone down upon Stonehenge, and flocks of pigeons flew over stone statues left unfinished outside Hagia Sophia. Endless pure white light flowed into the unbounded space, quietly embracing him and forming a white halo, highlighting his perfect profile before being consumed by the darkness below. He was still very young at the time, or I should say, too young. His gaze crossed the mountains, the vast stars, and the surging oceans. I could see the surprise and hesitation in his eyes. That was probably the only time I'd ever seen him wear such a cautious expression. It was so impressive and unforgettable. To me, that was the time when he was closest to being a human. His steps were slow and simple and out of sync with my music. What was the name of the song? Right, Violin Sonata number 9 in A major. It was a very difficult piece. When I first started practicing, I couldn't stand the sound of my own performance. But after practicing it hundreds, perhaps thousands of times, I developed muscle memory, and my fingers remembered every single note. I no longer tried to master the technique. It became a part of me, like breathing. That was the beauty of time. Yet, it also became boring. We were slaves to time, so we had no choice but to develop extraordinary patience. Victor wasn't so patient at that point. He had only stood before me a short while before he began to frown. Before he could ask, I answered all his questions. Who are you looking for? Your mother? No matter what you do, it's useless. All the stories that have been written into the wheel of destiny cannot be changed. You can try 100 times, 1,000 times, but the ending will always be the same. I understand that you can see endless timelines, but unfortunately, they all flow into the same river. Of course, I know you won't believe me just yet. I moved aside, allowing him to pass. He took 2 steps forward, then paused and looked at me. Oh, I almost forgot the most important thing. I stopped playing, held the bow of my violin to my chest, then bowed to him. My name is Zero. I am the Time Observer. I emphasized observer, hoping he could understand my good intentions. But he was still a young man after all. Without a word, he stepped into the corridor of emptiness. As endless night engulfed him, brilliant light fell upon his shoulders, only to be forgotten in the lonely river of time. When next we met, he had changed a little. His cautiousness and hesitation were gone. Instead, I saw the familiar composure in those eyes that gazed back at me. With a smile, I bowed to him and tried to ask how he was doing. To be frank, I was a bit sympathetic after witnessing his countless failures. He was reaching out, trying so hard to grab something from the empty void. I began to play Serenade. I loved this calm and gloomy melody, for it could help me pick out some reminiscent fragments from my lifeless memory. More importantly, this song would always bring interesting changes to Victor's indifferent countenance. I never liked the violin as it is now. So one day, I went to Italy in the 16th century and told a street musician that his violin was too ugly and crude, that he should wrap the wood in pelts and carve the body into more graceful curves. He did exactly as I said, and the new violin became widely popular. I was very satisfied. But 3 years later, all the violins in Italy reverted back to their original style. Not 300, not 30, but only 3 years. I was deeply puzzled. What happened in those 3 years? Was it time's choice, or was someone interfering with it? When I tried to change something again, a man showed up here. He told me that there are people who wander between timelines waiting to correct history. He also told me that although evolvers with time-related abilities were rare, there were still enough of them. What would become of the world if anyone could change the past as they saw fit? But changing something that has already been changed, is that really fixing it, or is it simply another form of change? I don't know the answer. But no matter what, at the end of all timelines, there was only ever one ending. And it has never changed. Victor took a long time to think. I had seen that face before. He was trying to extract every single piece of useful information from what I said, which was boring. There was no point trying to deduce something that had already been proven.
You said it took 3 years to fix something you altered. Are you sure not a single detail was changed during those 3 years?
For about half a second, Victor had me speechless. The violin I designed was given a new name at the time. Perhaps one day some archaeologist could dig it up and study it. It was clear Victor had a lot of expectations for this line of questioning, yet I still mercilessly disproved his hypothesis. But she is different. Different from everybody. Her fate is entwined with every single timeline, so she is destined to have the only possible ending, together with this world. You are different too. And I do feel pity for you. Whether it's the past or the future, you are the only person who can completely manipulate time, which means you are meant to carry this enormous responsibility. The responsibility that belongs to every member of the Space-Time Bureau. Victor, who had always remained expressionless, finally frowned.
What does the Space-Time Bureau have to do with me?
I was about to reply, but he turned and walked away. I realized then that he wasn't asking a question. Anyone who had just listened to my speech, full of words like ending and destiny, would have thought me a lunatic, or that the Space-Time Bureau was full of lunatics. I couldn't blame him for wanting to stay away from us. Unfortunately, everything I said was the truth. Interestingly, the more time I spent with him, I slowly began to recall the days when I was a human. But it wasn't until much, much later that I seemed to be able to understand Victor's decision. Time was the source of all meanings. It also marked the end of them. Flowers blossom and wither. Stars move across the sky. Civilizations rise and fall. Even the universe will eventually collapse. But none of these were representative of the dimensions of time. On the contrary, they only carried meaning when measured by time. That which we had spent an entire lifetime to find meant nothing to time. Every member of the Space-Time Bureau believed this, so naturally we expected Victor to feel the same. But he was different. Nobody understood Victor's obsession with meanings. They often carefully predicted his actions and secretly planned many paths to guide him. Which all turned out to be a complete waste of effort. He was looking for her, and he was determined to find her. If we were to use her as a bargaining chip, he would be willing to accept a fate full of drastic changes. Despite having found a breaking point, the situation was still deeply troubling. She shouldn't have survived in the first place, nor should she have been sent to other worlds. That would only further disrupt the timelines. It had never been done before. No one had that ability. No one except Victor. Still in shock from this turn of events, and after careful consideration, we offered him a kind gesture. As long as he was willing to cooperate with us, we would help him find her. Just as decisively as the many times he had refused us in the past, he immediately agreed. I wasn't sure if that decisiveness was good or bad. Messing up the timelines in that way would surely cause problems, right? Thinking about it, I began to feel very strange. Why panic when all the endings on all timelines had already been determined? We always used words such as interference or it had been fixed or determined, but were we really able to understand these terms? Victor had always been a man of few words, but at one point, he asked me a question concerning the real purpose of the Space-Time Bureau, which was very difficult to answer. We had no manuals or guidelines. We simply learned what to do through years of observation. I tried to put it simply. Every minor change in the timelines will cause a butterfly effect somewhere else. It may be positive or negative, but 90% of the time it will be negative. Yes, we do keep track of these statistics. The job of the Space-Time Bureau is to maintain the stability of all worlds across all timelines. You should join us. What I didn't mention was that he was a member of ours to begin with. Victor's reaction wasn't unexpected. He was silent for a long time, preoccupied with his thoughts and careful consideration.
I will admit that the Space-Time Bureau is necessary. But if the Space-Time Bureau's duty is to prevent anyone from rewriting the world's end, don't you think I'm such a person? Plus, the existence of time is objective, but the negative effects are subjective. I seriously doubt that 90% statistic.
I couldn't find a flaw in his reasoning, and he almost had me convinced. Unfortunately, based on my observations, whatever he was thinking didn't matter. The incident that changed his mind had already happened. The Queen had returned and brought with her a consequence that we didn't expect. The total collapse of this world had come much sooner than it was supposed to. The world had already converged, so we were unable to interfere through time or space. To allow each world to face their individual ending, or to converge all the world lines and push them to their final conclusion. Was there any real difference between the two options? No one knew the answer before the final moment arrived. Victor also realized the severity of the situation, but unlike us, he was still trying to find a loophole. He never believed there was ever only one ending. We have seen all the possible futures, all of us, but no one can change an ending that has been predetermined. That's why I never liked time. The more I observed it, the more I felt enslaved by it. The things that could be fixed or restored have already been predetermined or destined. In other words, they are meaningless. Every second, every moment, every timeline is meaningless. Victor quietly listened as I spoke. Afterward, he thought for a brief moment and gave me a response so funny that I almost laughed out loud.
But every single moment matters to those who actually live in this world.
Victor, even the gods don't have such compassion for the world. It's okay if you want to be a savior, but aren't you going to be disappointed if there's no happy ending?
I never wanted to be a savior, but I'm pretty sure this world means something to me, as well as everyone else in it.
He really believed his words. He was so resolute that he almost made me sound paranoid. I remembered a fish that I once had. It was a cheap fish of the red and white variety. I bought a small fish tank for it and put some little rocks and plants at the bottom. It was always daydreaming. Only when I knocked on the fish tank would it swim around cluelessly in the water. Sometimes I wondered, what was I to the fish? A giant that always appeared in its small world? At one point, I even wished that I knew an evolver that could interact with animals. I did some research, and according to the books, this type of fish typically lived between 3 to 5 years. I was quite happy about that. Maybe I could buy a larger fish tank and put more fish in it. Perhaps with friends it would find the world more interesting. But things never seemed to go my way. One day I woke up to find it upside down in the water. I picked it up and carefully examined it in my hand. It was nothing more than a dead fish, slippery, lifeless. Half of its round eyes had turned white. I tossed it into the garbage can. Perhaps there was a moment when I believed in meanings, but time made me forget that moment. Aren't you at all worried about the price to be paid, Victor?
The price? It's destined, so it will come to me regardless if I worry or not. That's what you people always say, isn't it?
You're not wrong.
If you want to tell me something, just say it.
Have you not realized the true reason behind this world's rapid collapse? The integral line that maintains the stable operation of all the world lines is about to be breached. Time itself has deteriorated and has been damaged beyond repair. No one can fix it, yet everyone refuses to take responsibility as they believe that what they have done has nothing to do with this.
What will happen to time?
Destruction? Or renaissance, maybe. Nobody knows. But all the endings we have seen lead to destruction.
So you're also looking for a new path?
We do not look for anything. We only wait. Wait for what is supposed to happen.
Did time tell you that?
All time-related rules are purely philosophical. It's meaningless to search for an answer.
It seems that time has told you what to do to revive it.
Have you not realized? You have placed yourself in a paradox.
Because I am still in this timeline.
Do you want to leave this timeline now?
No, I have no plans to do that.
Rules are rules. You cannot change anything on the same timeline.
Outside the rules, there will always be exceptions. Why are you laughing?
You are becoming more and more like the Victor I know.
And what kind of person is he?
Very powerful. Powerful enough to manipulate everything, including time itself.
Is that so?
Too bad time's up.
I still have something to do.
This responsibility is not yours alone.
I am not alone.
Is she your final card?
Quite the opposite.
Do you trust her that much?
Completely. The world I live in is real. To me, it's not one of numerous world timelines, but the only one. At least for now, this is what I believe.
Well, I hope you can be satisfied with this world's ending.
No more destiny, then?
For the moment, I am willing to try to believe that such a world that is so beloved will flourish in love.